Imagine a company so powerful it could declare war, sign treaties, execute criminals, mint its own coins, command 200 warships and a private army of 10,000 soldiers. This wasn't a government. This wasn't an empire. This was a corporation. At its peak, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was worth the equivalent of $8.28 trillion in today's money. More than Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Tesla combined. This is the story of how a small nation of merchants built the most powerful economic machine the world had ever seen, and what it cost them to do it. In the late 1500s, spice was the oil of the world. A pound of nutmeg in Amsterdam sold for a markup of 60 times its purchase price in the Banda Islands. 60 times. The margins were obscene, and everyone wanted it. The Portuguese had monopolized the spice routes for nearly a century, but the Dutch, practical, ruthless, relentlessly ambitious, had a different idea. They wouldn't just sail to the East Indies. They would own the East Indies. The trouble was the cost. A single voyage to Asia could take 2 years. Ships sank, crews mutinied, storms swallowed fleets whole. No single merchant could absorb that kind of risk alone. 1 in 3 Dutch ships that set sail for Asia in the 1590s never returned. The profit margins had to be extraordinary because the risk was fatal. So on March 20th, 1602, the Dutch States General did something that had never been done before. They merged 6 competing trading companies into one, and they allowed ordinary citizens, merchants, tradespeople, even servants, to buy shares in it. The world's first publicly traded corporation was born. Here's what made the VOC genuinely revolutionary, and why every publicly traded company you've ever invested in traces its DNA back to this moment in Amsterdam. Before the VOC, investors funded individual voyages. You put in money, the ship came back, or didn't, and you got your share. The company died when the voyage ended. High risk, no liquidity, no way out. The VOC changed everything. Your investment was permanent capital. You couldn't demand your money back from the company. But, and here's the genius, you could sell your share to someone else. To facilitate that, Amsterdam built the world's first stock exchange, the Amsterdam Beurs. Brokers gathering in a courtyard, buying and selling VOC shares like a proto-Nasdaq 400 years before Nasdaq existed. They raised 6.4 million guilders in their initial offering in 1602. Equivalent to roughly $110 million today. Over 1,800 investors participated, including maids, including bakers. They also invented short selling, futures contracts, options trading. The financial instruments that crashed markets in 2008 were first sketched out in 17th century Amsterdam by men in tall hats arguing over nutmeg. The VOC wasn't just a trading company. The Dutch government gave it something almost incomprehensible by modern standards: the power to negotiate treaties with foreign governments, build fortresses, coin money, and wage war, all in the name of shareholder returns. It established Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, as its Asian headquarters, a city built by a corporation, governed by a corporation, defended by a corporation. At its height, the VOC controlled the supply of cloves, nutmeg, and mace so completely that they burned excess spice to keep prices high. They weren't just playing capitalism, they were inventing it. Jan Pieter Sun Cohen, the VOC's Governor General, wrote to the company's board of directors, the famous Heren 17, the 17 Lords, with chilling clarity. Your honors know from experience that trade in Asia must be driven and maintained under the protection and favor of your honor's own weapons, and that the weapons must be paid for by the profits from the trade, so that we cannot carry on trade without war nor war without trade. Jan Pieter Sun Cohen, 1614. This was a company that understood something brutal and true: monopoly required violence, and they were willing to pay the price. So how does the most powerful corporation in history die? Not from competition, not from war, from within. The VOC's biggest problem was the problem every massive institution eventually faces: corruption, complacency, and complexity it couldn't control. Its employees, stationed in trading posts across Asia, thousands of miles from Amsterdam, ran their own private businesses on the side. They diverted company cargo. They accepted bribes. The acronym VOC, Dutchman joked, stood for Virgin onder corruptie, perished by corruption. Meanwhile, the British East India Company, younger, leaner, more aggressive, was eating into its markets. Coffee replaced spice as the global luxury commodity of choice. The VOC was selling yesterday's product at yesterday's prices. By the 1780s, the company was functionally bankrupt. The Dutch government, the same entity that had chartered it into existence, had to nationalize it. On December 31st, 1799, the VOC's charter expired and nobody renewed it. The most powerful corporation in human history was wound down quietly at the end of a century. Here's the thing about the VOC. It failed, and yet it won. Every structure of modern capitalism, publicly traded companies, stock exchanges, shareholder primacy, dividends, futures contracts, corporate governance, was either invented or refined by the VOC and the world it created around it. When you buy a share of Apple, you are participating in a system that was designed by Dutch merchants arguing over the price of nutmeg in 1602. The VOC also left behind a darker inheritance. The model of a corporation that could operate beyond the reach of any government, that could use force to protect profit, that could privatize entire economies. That's a model we're still wrestling with today. History and money have always been inseparable. Empires rise when trade routes open. They fall when the returns diminish. The VOC understood this more completely than any institution before or since. The first corporation ruled the world for nearly 200 years. Every corporation since has been living in its shadow. If this video made you think differently about who really built the modern economy, share it with someone who needs to know. And if you want to go deeper on the financial innovations that came out of Amsterdam's golden age, the birth of central banking, the first stock market crash, the tulip mania, those videos are coming. Subscribe. The history of money is wilder than you think.